Hello and welcome to Epiphytic Cacti. About 4 months ago now, I had actually done a video about rooting epiphyllum cuttings. I got these from a seller on Facebook. She runs like a store on Facebook, which is Heny's Epiphyllums. Really great resource for epiphyllum. You know, it's another seller that I trust very much, that if I purchase something from her, it is going to bloom true. Like I said, people do make mistakes. I always say that because it would make me very sad if people attacked other people over something that was an honest mistake. So I think that sometimes, you know, you have to have a little bit of leeway in your heart for those kinds of things. But everything that I have ever purchased from her has bloomed true. So she's another seller that I very much trust, one that I don't worry about if I purchase her cuttings that, you know, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road, it's going to bloom and turn out to be something else. This was a hybrid I wanted very, very much, and I'm not sure how to say that, so I'm really not going to, but we'll kind of zoom in there and you can see that I planted these cuttings on 4/21/2020. I get a lot of comments, or even just see a lot of people trying to figure out why their cuttings, they're rotting, they're not rooting. If I planted these on like 4/21, you know, months and months and months ago, I actually just noticed maybe about a month ago or so, you know, maybe a little bit longer, that these guys actually plumped up. It was the indicator that they had formed roots. I don't need to pull these guys out of here and investigate what's going on in there. You know, like you can tell by looking at the cutting usually whether or not it has formed roots. Every once in a while you get a cutting that is just so thick and so like stiff and sturdy that you can't really tell. But, you know, generally you can always tell a little bit because they do kind of wrinkle up. And then when they root, they get kind of stiff and fat. And, you know, you can see that kind of thing. But what I really wanted to do here was just kind of show this because it's been months. When I say that growing epiphyllum takes patience, it really takes a lot of patience because, you know, like you put that cutting in there and then you think that 2 weeks later it's going to form roots, and that is just not what happens. It takes months. So it's something where you just kind of have to like sit back and ignore them. And people used to use this term for caring for epiphyllum a lot that always would puzzle me so much. They would say benign neglect. And it's like, what does that mean? What do you mean benign neglect? And it really just means like harmless neglect. You know, you just kind of, epiphyllum, it's like, you can't really baby them because they don't really appreciate it. They will just die. So it's one of those things where, you know, you got to make sure that, you know, you notice them and you water them and everything. But at the same time, it's bordering on like, don't pay them too much attention, because if you pay them too much attention, you're going to kill them. Let's say that like I live in a really humid sort of area just because I live right off of Lake Superior. And when I say like, I live very close to Lake Superior. So there is a lot of water, you know, fresh water that's in the air. There's a lot of fog. It's very humid here during the summer months. It's very dry during the winter months because of the indoor heaters, but out here it's very humid. And I find that works really well for just throwing the cuttings outside and just like letting them be. But let's say I lived someplace like Arizona where it was not like that. You know, I may need to actually spray these or like give them like a little bit of mist or whatever every once in a while kind of situation. But here, if I did that, I would kill these dead. If I came out here every day and was like, oh, you know, misting my little baby cuttings, I am literally going to love it to death. Because that's just too much. Here, I don't have to worry about it, just throw them outside. And I think in most places, you probably don't have to worry about it all that much. You can just kind of like throw them outside when the temperatures are nice and warm and, you know, put them somewhere where they get the little bit of protection from the rain and just sort of let it be. But when you see this, it really kind of highlights to me just how much patience you actually need. You know, I don't fret about this anymore at all. Like once upon a time, years and years and years ago, when I very first started collecting, I used to fret. I used to, you know, go around and like get little dribbles of water and like spray every day. You know, I had my little sprayer and I was spraying and I was doing all this crazy stuff to, you know, like love them so much and keep them alive. And I'm pretty sure I killed more than enough in doing that before I think. And, you know, I just sort of learned that they just sort of, they're way tougher than you think. They're so tough. So it's something that now, like I said, I just stick them in there and I hang them up where they get a little protection from the rain outside, and I just absolutely ignore them, you know. And then 4 months later I walk by and I'm like, oh look, a nubbin. You know, like, it's not something that I worry about too much, but you can see here, you know, it just started just now after all this time has just started to produce new growth. So patience is really truly the name of the game. Every once in a while you get a hybrid that does a little bit faster, that is real quick on the uptake. Every once in a while you get one that is really slow. And let me show you what I mean by slow. This guy right here, I have honestly had this guy for 2 years. 2 years. Is it rooted? I don't know. Does it have any new growth? Absolutely not. I will say that in a very uncharacteristic kind of thing, instead of this guy ever trying to grow or do anything that symbolizes the desire to live, instead one day, this spring, he tried to produce a bud, so he tried to bloom instead, and he still hasn't grown. And this has got to be some kind of a record. You know, I can see that its branches, it's like kind of thin, it's a little papery or whatever. You know, I don't know if it has roots down there. I can see there's some odd sign of life here. I don't know. But, you know, like, that's 2 years. That's over 2 years. Over 2 years. Absolutely nothing. This is not the only cutting that I have like this. I've got a whole entire area of my garden that I keep that is basically for kids that just don't do anything or just struggle their whole entire lives. Some epiphyllum are like that. While other epiphyllum, you know, like this guy here, he's a little bit slow to start growing and everything, but you know, he's growing now. I'm sure he'll just keep growing and keep getting more and more beautiful. I'm sure he'll be a fantastic grower. You know, that's just kind of the name of the game. Some hybrids, they just don't do all that well. There's an example of another hybrid that this guy came from a friend here. Yeah. This guy came from a friend, and it came as a little plant that had been kind of rooted a while back. But like, look at the amazingness of this guy. He's basically like going, he's not just like, I'm gonna grow. He's like, I'm gonna grow fantastically and just like be incredible. Some hybrids are like that. This one I would actually say I struggle with so bad. And I can, this thing spots for me in a way that is just unnaturally messed up. And it appears that it doesn't matter where it comes from. So to me, I'm not so sure that that has anything to do with the media that it's in. I'm guessing that it probably has a whole lot more to do with my climate than anything else. This is a hybrid that is known for spotting for sure. But I had always wondered if it was more, you know, either the specific hybrid that I had, or if it was actually an acclimatization sort of issue, you know, any of those kinds of things that cause this kind of little spotting that you see on the branches. But no, as it turns out, I think it's just something about where I'm growing at. One really cool thing that I might actually try with this is the friend who sent me this plant. Thank you very much. And this is Fern Laborde. The friend who sent me this plant also sent me coconut chips, like husk pieces of the chips. And something that I might try with this is I might actually try eventually to take a little cutting of this and see if growing in that media, because I do know that he said that it spots a little bit for him, but not much. And I can see these old branches and I'm not seeing tons of spots. So we'll see, like, you know, is it media? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually something that is just something about my environment. You know, maybe the little bit chillier temperatures with the excessive amount of humidity that's here. I do notice this thing immediately starts to do this spotting thing very specifically when the season changes. So it's kind of a strange thing, but, and it didn't seem to matter whether it was changing seasons from winter to spring or if it was changing from fall to winter. So I just wanted to kind of show, you know, the amount of patience and how some hybrids, they grow really fast. Some hybrids basically, I don't know if it was the hybrid here, but like sometimes you just get a bunk cutting that for whatever reason, it just doesn't do anything. It's not really the seller's fault. It's really nobody's fault, but like something about something caused this guy to basically go to sleep. It's almost like it's in hibernation and it doesn't quite know what to do with itself. You know, some kids, especially when you're rooting, really, really slow to root. You know, they just sort of, I don't know if it was slow to root for me really so much as average. I've said this before. Generally, most of the time it takes about 2 months for them to form roots, and sometimes they take a lot longer. I had a hybrid that took over a year to form any kind of roots. So, you know, patience is just really the name of the game. But thank you for watching and happy cacti growing.